My little brother keeps coming home after we buried him. We buried my little brother Liam on a cold Tuesday morning, car accident, instant, closed casket. My mother collapsed twice during the service, and my father hasn't spoken a full sentence since. I keep replaying the last thing Liam said to me, "Don't let them take me." I thought he meant the paramedics. 2 nights after the funeral, our doorbell rang at 1:13 a.m. Dad opened the door and screamed so hard my ears rang. Liam was standing there. Same clothes he was buried in, same shoes, same little birthmark on his cheek, except, his skin looked dry. Not rotten, just dry, like he'd been left in the sun too long. He was smiling, but his eyes didn't move when he looked at us. They stayed wide and fixed. Mom rushed forward like instinct overpowered fear, hugging him so tight her knuckles went white. He hugged her back, but the motion was stiff, mechanical. His neck didn't bend, he kept staring straight ahead. When I whispered his name, he turned his entire torso toward me without moving his head. The smile dropped. "I told you not to let them take me." We didn't sleep that night. Dad kept insisting it was shock, trauma, grief hallucinations. However, Mom made Liam hot chocolate and tucked him into bed like nothing was wrong. He didn't drink it, he didn't blink either. The next morning, he was gone. His bed was perfectly made, the window was open even though it had been locked. We called the police but didn't tell them who exactly was missing. What would we say? Our dead son wandered off again. That night, 1:13 a.m. exactly, the doorbell rang. Liam again. This time he looked worse, not rotting but cracking. Thin fissures ran down his cheeks, like dried clay. When he smiled, the cracks widened. "They're coming soon," he whispered. Dad tried to shut the door, but Liam put his hand against it. His fingernails weren't attached anymore, they slid upward when he pressed. Mom screamed, and Liam tilted his head. Slowly, too slowly, and a piece of skin peeled from his neck and dropped to the porch. He didn't seem bothered. "They're looking for me. And for you." We didn't let him inside. Dad bolted the door while Mom sobbed into my hoodie. We heard Liam scratching at the door for exactly 11 minutes. Then silence. This morning, we found footprints in the yard. Small ones. Leading from the woods behind our house, to our door, and then back toward the trees. Lots of them. Way more than just one child. Some were tiny, baby-sized, some were long and thin like stretched feet. Tonight, Dad says we should leave the house, but Mom refuses. If he comes back, he'll be scared if we're not here. It's 12:59 a.m. right now. I'm writing this from my bedroom floor. I can hear footsteps outside. Not one set, dozens, light, fast, shuffling. They keep circling the house, claws tapping glass, something dragging across the siding. And through it all, one voice whispering. "Let me in. They know you can hear me." The clock just hit 1:13. The doorbell is ringing. And it won't stop. Please someone, anyone. Help me. The end. The Good Samaritan. The Corolla died 3 miles past the last exit sign, the engine cutting out with a shudder that Claire felt in her teeth. She coasted onto the shoulder and sat there in the dark, hazards clicking, watching semis blast past and rock the car in their wake. Her phone showed 1 bar. Then none. Then 1 again. The tow company put her on hold before a woman with a smoker's rasp told her 2 hours, minimum. Maybe 3. Dispatcher said there'd been a pileup west of Barstow and they were running every truck they had. "There's a rest stop about a mile ahead," the woman said. "If you want to wait somewhere with a bathroom." Claire looked at the desert darkness beyond her headlights. A mile didn't sound far. A mile sounded like a death sentence. "I'll stay with the car." "Suit yourself. Driver'll call when he's 20 out." The line went dead. Claire locked the doors and turned off the hazards to save the battery and sat in the darkness, watching her phone screen dim and brighten and dim again. A pickup pulled onto the shoulder behind her. She watched it in the rearview. White Ford, maybe 10 years old, work lights mounted on the roof rack. It sat there for a full minute before the driver's door opened and a man stepped out. He was mid-50s, maybe. Thick through the shoulders. He wore a denim jacket and walked with the unhurried gait of someone who had nowhere else to be. When he reached her window, he made a little circular motion with his finger. Claire cracked the window 2 inches. Car trouble? His voice was gentle. Midwestern, maybe. The kind of voice that read bedtime stories and knew all the words to church hymns. Tow truck's coming. That's good. He nodded, looking at her hood like he could diagnose the problem through it. How long they say? 2 hours. 2 hours. He repeated it like he was tasting the words. That's a long time to sit on the side of the 15. You got water? Gets cold out here at night, but you'd be surprised how fast you dehydrate. I'm fine. Rest stops about a mile up. Vending machines, bathroom, good overhead lighting. Safer than sitting here in the dark. I'll wait with the car. He smiled. His teeth were very white and very straight, the kind of teeth that cost money. Smart. Don't trust strangers. That's smart. He patted the roof of her car twice, gently, the way you'd pat a dog. You need anything, I'll be at that rest stop. White Ford. Name's Gary. Thank you. Don't mention it. He walked back to his truck. Didn't hurry. Didn't look back. The Ford pulled around her and merged onto the highway, taillights dwindling until they disappeared. Claire realized she'd been holding her breath. The temperature in the car dropped until she could see her breath. She started the engine to run the heater. It turned over, coughed, died. She tried again. Nothing. She got out and started walking. The desert was louder than she'd expected. Whined through scrub brush, the distant keen of something that might have been a coyote, the hiss of sand against her jeans. The highway was a black river to her left, cars passing in bursts of light and noise that left her more alone each time they faded. The rest stop appeared as a glow on the horizon first, then resolved into a concrete rectangle surrounded by parking lot lights on tall poles. 2 big rigs sat at the far end, dark and silent, their drivers asleep in the cabs. A sedan with Nevada plates sat near the bathroom entrance. And the white Ford, parked directly under the brightest light. Gary sat on a picnic bench near the vending machines, reading a paperback. He looked up when Claire entered the pool of light and smiled like she was an old friend arriving at a party. Decided to take me up on it. Car won't start. Battery, probably. Sitting with the hazards on drains them faster than people think. He closed his book, something with an old western cover. I'm fine. Water, then. You look cold. She was cold. Her jacket was in the car. She'd walked a mile in a thin sweater because the thought of going back for it felt like admitting she'd be out here longer than she could stand. Okay. Water. Thank you. He fed quarters into the machine and retrieved a bottle, brought it to her with both hands extended like an offering. When she took it, his fingers didn't linger. He stepped back immediately, maintaining a distance that felt calculated to reassure. I didn't catch your name. Claire. Claire. He smiled again. Pretty name. Old-fashioned. You don't hear it much anymore. It was my grandmother's. That's nice. Keeping it in the family. He returned to the picnic bench, sitting on the table with his feet on the seat, hands folded in his lap. Patient. Unhurried. You call the tow company again? Let them know where you are. Not yet. Signal's better over by the bathrooms. Something about the building, I think. Metal in the roof blocks the interference. Claire walked to the bathroom entrance. Gary didn't follow. She checked her phone and found 2 bars, solid. The tow company picked up after 3 rings. He's still working the pile up, the woman said. Shouldn't be too much longer. You're next on his list. Can you tell him I'm at the rest stop? Mile past where my car broke down. I'll let him know. Claire hung up. When she turned around, Gary was standing 10 feet away. Get through. Yeah. Still waiting on the pile-up. Those can take a while. Depends on how bad it is, how many vehicles. He tilted his head. You want to sit? Benches aren't comfortable, but they're better than standing. They sat at the picnic table, across from each other. Gary picked up his paperback and set it aside. The cover showed a man in a black hat pointing a revolver at something outside the frame. You read westerns? Claire asked. Louis L'Amour, mostly. My father used to read them. Reminds me of him. Is he still around? Passed when I was 30. Heart attack. Quick, at least. A semi pulled into the rest stop, air brakes hissing. The driver climbed down from the cab, a heavy man in a flannel shirt, and walked to the bathroom without looking at either of them. Gary watched him go. Truckers don't sleep enough. Read an article about it once. They take pills to stay awake, drive 18, 20 hours at a stretch. Then they pull off and crash for a few hours and do it again. Hell of a way to make a living. What do you do? Contractor. Kitchens and bathrooms, mostly. Remodels. He held up his hands, showing her the calluses. Good honest work. Keeps me busy. You're out late for a contractor. Couldn't sleep. Happens sometimes. I drive when it gets bad. Helps clear my head. He smiled. You married, Claire? Divorced. Kids? No. That's probably for the best. Divorce is hard enough without kids in the middle. He was watching the truckers rig now, waiting. I've got a daughter. Lives in Portland. Works for one of those tech companies, the kind where they have ping-pong tables in the office and call their employees a family. That's nice. We don't talk much anymore. The trucker came out of the bathroom, still not looking at them, and climbed back into his cab. The engine rumbled to life. Headlights swept the parking lot as he pulled out, and then they were alone. You're nervous, Gary said. It wasn't a question. I'm just tired. You're nervous because you're smart. Woman alone, middle of the night, stranger being friendly. He nodded slowly. I tell my daughter the same thing. Trust your instincts. Be careful. The world isn't safe for women the way it's safe for men. Never has been. That's good advice. Is it? He leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Here's what I wonder about, Claire. What good does being careful do if the danger doesn't look like danger? If it looks like a guy in a denim jacket reading Louis L'Amour at a rest stop? If it looks like help? Claire didn't answer. My daughter, Gary said. The reason we don't talk. Her mother told her something before she died. A warning. Stay away from your father. Don't be alone with him. Don't trust him. Why would she say that? Because she knew me. Better than anyone ever has. He picked up the paperback and turned it over in his hands, not looking at the cover. Claire, I've been doing this drive for 3 years now. Every few weeks, when I can't sleep. And I stop here every time. Right here at this rest stop. You know why? Why? Because people break down out here. All the time. 40 miles of nothing in either direction, cell service that barely works, tow trucks that take forever. And most of the time, people just wait it out. But sometimes there's a woman. Alone. Stranded. And I see her car on the shoulder, and I think to myself, she's exactly the kind of person that bad things happen to out here. Wouldn't it be something if I could help? If I could just make sure she's safe until her ride comes. That's very kind. No. It isn't. He set the book down. Kindness would be driving past. Kindness would be minding my own business. But I can't seem to do that. I see a woman alone in the dark, and I have to stop. I have to. Claire's phone buzzed in her pocket. She didn't reach for it. You should check that, Gary said. Might be your tow truck. She pulled out her phone. Text from an unknown number, en route. 20 minutes. He's coming, she said. 20 minutes. Good. That's good. Gary stood up from the bench. Walk with me. I should wait here. Where he can see me. He'll find you. Walk with me. Just to the edge of the light. I want to show you something. They walked together toward the edge of the parking lot, where the overhead lights gave way to desert darkness. Gary stayed a half step behind her, just in her peripheral vision. She could hear him breathing, slow and even. This is the spot, he said. Claire stopped. The highway was visible in the distance, headlights appearing and disappearing. What am I looking at? Nothing. That's the point. You can't see anything from here. Someone in the rest stop, they can't see us. Someone on the highway, they're going too fast to notice. We're invisible. Claire turned to face him. What do you want? I want to tell you something. Something I've never told anyone. He put his hands in his pockets, and Claire flinched before she could stop herself. He noticed. I'm not going to hurt you, Claire. That's not what this is. But I need you to understand what you're standing next to. What you've been sitting across from for the last hour. What you took water from. Okay. I've never hurt anybody. Not in the way my daughter thinks. Not in the way you're thinking right now. He paused. But I've thought about it. I've thought about it more than I've thought about anything else in my life. Since I was 14 years old, I've thought about what it would be like. The sound it would make. How it would feel in my hands. Whether they'd fight or freeze or beg. I've read about it. I've planned it. I've driven out here, to this exact spot, and I've walked women to this exact place, and I've imagined it so clearly that sometimes I can't tell the difference between what I've done and what I've only wanted to do. Claire's legs felt locked in place. Later, she would wonder why she didn't run. Later, she would lie awake for months turning this moment over, trying to understand the paralysis. Say something, Gary said. What do you want me to say? I don't know. That's the thing. I've never gotten this far before. The other times, I walked them out here, and I made small talk, and I let them go, and they never knew. They got in their cars or their tow trucks and they drove away and they never thought about me again. Just a nice man at a rest stop. But tonight I wanted to say it out loud. I wanted someone to know. Why me? I don't know. He smiled, and it was worse than anything else he'd done because it looked genuine. Warm. Maybe because you look like you'd understand. You've got that look, Claire. Like you've seen things. Like you know the world isn't what people pretend it is. I don't understand this at all. No. I guess you don't. He looked at the desert, at the darkness beyond the parking lot lights. My wife figured it out. Took her 20 years, but she figured it out. Not what I'd done, because I haven't done anything. What I am. She could see it in me, she said. Something behind my eyes. Something that wasn't like other people. She stayed with me anyway, because she thought she could fix it, or save me, or some other thing that women tell themselves when they love someone they shouldn't love. And when she was dying, when she knew she couldn't protect anyone anymore, she told our daughter. She said, "Your father is a monster. He's never done anything, but he is. Stay away from him. And my daughter believed her. Because my wife wasn't a liar. My wife was the most honest person I've ever known. And if she said I was a monster, then I was. Are you? Gary looked at her for a long time. I don't know. I think about it all the time, and I still don't know. What makes someone a monster? Is it what they do, or what they want to do? If I live my whole life without hurting anyone, am I still a monster because I wanted to? Because I thought about it every single day? Because the only reason I didn't was fear, not conscience? I don't know either. No. You don't. He took a step toward her, and Claire stepped back, and he stopped. That's the first time you've moved away from me. The whole night, that's the first time. You didn't move away when I walked up to your car. You didn't move away when I brought you the water. You didn't move away when we sat at the table, when we walked out here, when I told you what I was. But now you move. Why now? Because now I believe you. Good. He nodded. That's good. You should believe me. He took his hands out of his pockets, slowly, showing her they were empty. Your tow truck's going to be here soon. You should go wait by the road. What are you going to do? Drive home. Go to bed. Wake up tomorrow and give an estimate on a bathroom remodel in Rancho Cucamonga. He smiled again. That's the thing about people like me, Claire. We look like everybody else. We sound like everybody else. We do bathroom remodels and read Louis L'Amour and stop to help women whose cars have broken down. And most of the time nothing happens, because the circumstances aren't right, or the risk is too high, or we just decide not to. But the wanting is always there. Every single day. And you'll never be able to tell. Not until it's too late. He turned and walked back toward the rest stop, hands in his pockets, unhurried. Claire watched him until he reached his truck. He got in, started the engine, and pulled out onto the highway heading east. Toward Victorville. Toward a house where he lived alone. She stood at the edge of the parking lot until headlights slowed on the highway and the yellow flash of a tow truck's light bar appeared. The driver pulled into the rest stop and leaned out the window. Young guy, early 20s, apologetic about the wait. Hell of a night, he said. You okay? You look like you saw a ghost. Claire climbed into the passenger seat. Closed the door. Locked it. Just cold, she said. Long wait. He talked the whole way back to her car. The pile-up near Barstow, the overtime, his girlfriend who didn't understand why he worked nights. Claire didn't hear any of it. She was thinking about Portland. About a daughter who believed her mother's warning. About a wife who stayed with a monster for 20 years because she thought she could save him. The Corolla's battery was dead, just like Gary had said. The driver jumped it in 5 minutes, and Claire sat behind the wheel as the engine idled, waiting for the charge. To build. You good to drive? I'm good. Nearest gas station's about 20 miles. Get yourself some coffee. I will. She pulled onto the highway and drove east, toward the glow of Las Vegas on the horizon. In her rear view, the rest stop shrank to a single point of light in all that darkness, and then it was nothing at all. She never told anyone about Gary. Not the police, not her friends, not the therapist she started seeing 6 months later for anxiety she couldn't explain. What would she say? A man talked to her. A man gave her water. A man walked her to the edge of the light and told her what he was and then drove home to sleep in his bed like any other person. Nothing happened. That was the worst part. Nothing happened, and she couldn't prove anything, and somewhere in Victorville a man with a gentle voice was lying awake in the dark, thinking about the sound it would make. The way it would feel. Whether they'd fight or freeze or beg. And Claire would never know if tonight was the night he stopped imagining. Or tomorrow night. Or the night after that. The end. I tested out a drug and now I can't stop eating people. Let me just start with a little backstory. I was dead broke. Fresh out of high school and struggling to pay for college. My job at the local mall wasn't cutting it, and time was running out fast for me to cover next semester's tuition. During one of my very limited off days, I had been in the grocery store, picking up a few things to hold me over for the next 2 weeks. As I stood over the frozen meat section, lost in a trance with my mind in a million places at once, I felt a hand on my shoulder. "Good morning, sir, how are you doing this morning?" I glanced over his uniform. It was too refined and decorated to be that of a recruiter. Looking down at my own outfit I realized that I looked, in fact, quite homeless. You know. Making it through. That's excellent to hear, sir. Hey, I have a question, have you ever given any thought to the US military? He asked as if he knew my answer, as if he could read it on my face. Listen, man, I'm in college. Barely making it by, but, you know. Yes sir, I do. Mind if I ask what you're going to school for? I answered honestly by telling him that I was going to be an engineer, to which he replied enthusiastically. Oh, man. The army is begging for some engineers. And guess what? All your schooling paid for. You help us, we help you. I thought about it for a moment. I hated to admit it, but his words were swaying me a bit, and he could sense it. That was a dangerous place to be in. Before I got the chance to respond he spoke again. Pays good too. I knew I had to put a stop to this now before he got more of his foot in the door, so I responded with a quick, "I'll think about it," as I shuffled away. As I walked with my back toward him he called out once more. Please do. We'll be seeing ya. He then seemed to speak into what I assumed was a mic that must have been tucked neatly under his collar. I couldn't make out what he said, just that his face had shifted from approachable to what can best be described as a look of complete authority as he meandered back towards the entrance of the store. I hadn't thought much of it and continued shopping as usual. I had work the next day, and as I returned home from an absolutely soul-crushing shift, I found that an envelope had been placed in the seam of my doorframe. It was marked with a stamp bearing the logo of the United States Army. Damn, I thought to myself. They really don't play about their recruitment. I was about to push my way inside, ready to collapse in bed when my foot landed on yet another sheet of paper. Eviction notice, in bright red lettering. The tape must have slipped right off the metal door. I don't know if it was because of my exhausting shift or if my mind had just completely given up, but I simply stepped over the notice and made my way to my bedroom, tossing the envelope on the coffee table. I was out before my head even hit the pillow. The next morning, I had to fight to get out of bed. Everything seemed hopeless and, I can admit, this is the moment where I had lost faith in myself entirely. I remembered the words of the guy from the store. Schooling paid for, guaranteed benefits, guaranteed housing, plus a guaranteed job. Fuck it. I ripped the envelope open and removed its contents anxiously. What I read surprised me. This wasn't a recruitment letter. Well, it was. Just not for military recruitment. They weren't asking me for my service, they weren't even asking me to consider. This letter was to recruit people to test out a new drug that the Army had been developing. There weren't many details on the drug itself or its effects. But it did include that payment for this little trial would be $5,000 for 1 day of my time. The letter looked official. It was even watermarked with the bald eagle symbol that you see the government use. It provided a phone number and urged me to call immediately if interested. I called, and on the third ring, a man picked up. I recognized the voice immediately. It was the man from the store. Afternoon, Donovan. I'm assuming you got our letter. Yeah, I did. Wait, how do you even know where I live? He responded confidently. It's our job to know, son. Now, I'm assuming you're calling because you're interested in our trial, correct? For a moment, I froze. I'd never even smoked weed before, and now they want to give me $5,000 to try a drug meant for soldiers. Then I remembered the eviction notice, and it were as though my mouth spoke without permission. Absolutely. I'm more than interested. Excellent, excellent. We're sending the address over now. Just as the last word escaped his lips, my phone chimed with an email notification. It was completely blank save for the single address. It didn't even appear to have a sender. Just an anomalous email amongst the thousands in my mailbox. Before I could speak, the line went dead and silence filled the apartment once more. But fuck, F-U-C-K, he hadn't given me a time. Oh, well, I thought. I'll just go now. Hopping in my car and inputting the address into the Maps app on my phone, I found that the location was 2 hours from my home. It's $5,000, it's $5,000, I kept repeating to myself as the car ride dragged on. After about 45 minutes, I found that I was in the middle of nowhere and still had 75 minutes to go. I drove on, repeating my mantra as I passed trees, fields, and more trees. Finally, just on the horizon, surrounded by towering oak trees, was the most secret government-looking facility I had ever seen. It must have been 20 stories tall, no windows, a single door directly in the center, and no cars in sight. I thought this was probably the strangest detail of all. Surely, someone had to be here besides me. This should have been the sign that made me turn around and figure things out on my own. I didn't know just how out of my depth I really was. But, of course. It's $5,000. I pulled my car into the empty parking lot and started for the door. I opened it up and was greeted by darkness. An empty warehouse. I had been duped. Duped on an astonishingly professional level, but duped nonetheless. However, just as I began to turn and walk away, I could hear footsteps, and row by row the overhead fluorescent lights began to flicker on. Walking towards me with a false, corporate smile, was the man from the store. "Donovan," he cheered. "So glad you could make it." I glanced around suspiciously. "You the only person here?" He responded, almost eagerly. "I'm the only person you need." As he approached, he extended an arm and wrapped it firmly around my shoulders. "Follow me right this way, young man." As we walked, a sudden feeling of dread began to come over me. Dread quickly morphed into regret, and I attempted to pull away from the man. To my dismay, his arm did not budge. He was essentially dragging me across the concrete floor as I struggled timidly. As he pulled me, he just kept reassuring me. "This is what you wanted, you're evicted, you need this. How are you going to pay for school? I promise, this will all be over soon." The lights continued flickering on as we moved through the warehouse. Eventually, the place was illuminated enough to reveal a door that I had not noticed before, and we were headed towards it fast. I'm not sure how, but I managed to get my nerves under control. Maybe I was overreacting. I mean, it's the military. I'm not selling an organ to someone on the black market or anything like that. I told myself I'd be fine. Once we entered the room, I was blinded by the sheer whiteness of everything, so much so that I had to squint my eyes to avoid a headache. Right dead in the center of the room, was a steel chair with leather restraints attached to the armrests. I felt the man's grip on me loosen as he gestured to the chair with his hand. "Please, Mr. Meeks, have a seat." Cautiously, I sat down and he began strapping my arms down tight. "Hey, so, this isn't really needed, right? Just a precaution." His lack of an answer concerned me. He just continued tightening the restraints. "Oh yeah, when do I get my mon dash?" The man interrupted. He was no longer turned towards me, but instead was facing a mirror on the wall just to the right of me. "Ladies and gentlemen, we have here today, Subject 1 for the conduction of the GH75 trial. As you can see, the subject is restrained and is of no threat to anyone. I ask that you please take notes, and be prepared to discuss what you've learned once the trial has concluded. No threat to anyone. What an odd thing to say. Amidst my confusion, the mirror seemed to disappear. What was once mine and the man's reflection, was now a window. On the opposite side sat about a dozen men and women dressed in military uniform, each one studiously looking on, gripping their pads and pens firmly. Just as a precaution, the man continued. On cue, 2 armed guards with SWAT shields aggressively entered the room, rifles trained on me. This drug is experimental after all. I knew I had made a mistake. Nothing about this was normal, but hell, what was I gonna do now? The man finally turned to me once more before whispering to me through a twisted smile. Thank you for your service. Before I knew it, a quick bit of pain radiated from the crease of my right arm. He had stuck the needle in and injected me. There was no going back now. I expected to feel, I don't know, organ failure or something like that. But, no. Instead, what I felt, was complete and total euphoria. Not like heroin, at least I don't think, more like the strength in my body had been amplified. I felt capable. This feeling grew, and before I could register anything, I felt more than capable. I felt disrespected that they believed these restraints could hold me, and my forearm muscles began to tighten and push hard against the leather straps. I could see my veins pulsating. They pushed so hard against my skin that they looked as though they were glowing. My heart began to beat out of my chest and my brain was pounding. The pain made me angry. So angry. I couldn't help but gnash my teeth and struggle violently against the puny restraints. I could feel my face radiating with heat, and I must have looked completely insane judging by the nervous looks on the guards' faces. Wipe that fear off your faces, soldiers, the man screamed. You are Marines. The man looked totally in control. This made me even angrier. At this point it felt like there was fire beneath my skin begging to be released, and my mouth overflowed with froth. My anger was reaching an absolute boiling point, and all that I could feel throughout my entire body was pure unbridled rage. I could feel the chair shaking as I thrashed and growled like a madman, and even so, the man remained completely calm. I knew I was going to kill him. I knew that there was no way he'd leave this building alive. None of them would leave this building alive. They were all dead, and none of them even knew it yet. In one final explosive burst of energy the leather restraint snapped, and with supernatural speed I had sprung from the chair. Both guards opened fire on me immediately, but I wouldn't go down. I could see their terrified faces, the faces of the people behind the glass, and it fueled me. I hobbled towards the guards, against their barrage of gunfire. With one swipe of my hand, I ripped the shield from the guard on the right, tearing his arm completely off of his body in the process. His partner had begun beating me over the head with his rifle. Snatching it from his hand, I heard the shattering sound of each of his fingers that he had wrapped so tightly around the weapon. Both guards were screaming now, and, God, my God, was it infuriating. I forced the barrel of the gun deep into the guard's throat. He made a gargled, wet sound, before I pulled the trigger and emptied the rest of his magazine into his stomach. He fell to the floor lifeless, leaving his partner alone and critically injured. I didn't need to do anything to him. Enough had already been done. He would die knowing he failed. I looked back at the man. There it was. There was that satisfying look of terror I had been so desperately trying to evoke. He fumbled, clumsily, to open the door to get to the other side of the glass window. His trembling made it impossible, however. I drew out the moment. Savored every step I took towards him. Every beat of his heart and trickle of his sweat. As I stood over him he fell to his knees, like a coward. Begging for his life. Tears were rolling down his face as he asked God for forgiveness, asked me for forgiveness. But I was beyond reason. The first punch knocked him out cold. I could hear his neck splinter from the second one. But I wasn't satisfied. I drove my fist into his head over and over again. I could hear his bladder failing as fluids began to pool around his previously spotless trousers. I couldn't stop. Once I hit brain, that's when the seizing began. His thralls were unnatural and sharp. Though they had been mostly destroyed, his eyes rolled into his skull and his body looked like it was being lifted off the ground from his midsection as he continued to seize. With one final punch, his head cracked open from the front to the back. Brain matter oozed out of the wound and I stared in awe at the bloody mess in front of me. In the midst of my rage, I had neglected to feel the void that had opened in my stomach. I had never been hungrier. My mind told me one thing. You know what you want to do. Without even a hint of hesitation, I began picking at the brain matter that leaked from the man's destroyed head. It started off small, but before I could help it I was shoveling fistfuls of this guy's memories directly into my mouth. The taste was indescribable. I couldn't stop, period. I devoured what was left of his face before moving on to the guards. The more I ate, the more I felt the drug's effects kick in. I had almost forgotten about the people behind the window. They couldn't have been so lucky. The window, the false mirror, it was nothing. It shattered from just one hit and they began trampling over each other trying to leave the room. I tore them apart, friends. Limb from limb, bite by bite. They're all gone now. They're all mine. I exited that warehouse covered from head to toe in their precious lifeblood, carrying with me the vial of the mystery drug that I found in the recruiter's coat pocket. I could barely contain myself on the drive home. And that's where I am now. I'm not concerned with the eviction, school, and certainly not money. My mind has been reprogrammed. That's what the drug does. It's a violent drug made for soldiers who were meant to die. A last stand drug. I have no intentions on dying. I have no intentions to stop. The only intention that remains in my mind is simple. Find more food. The end. Santa gave me head for Christmas. I'll start this off by saying, I am not a very physically strong person. Pretty much all through grade school I was teased and bullied because of my string bean demeanor. There was one bully in particular, who, no matter what, always had to torment me. I'd grown accustomed to the hole, shoved into a locker, and, bubblegum in the hair, routine. God, I must have had to cut that sticky mess at least 10 times. His name was Daniel Carson and one day, he went above and beyond his usual torture. He caught me off guard while I was walking home one day, a day where the air seemed to stab your skin with tiny pins of frigid air. I hadn't heard him creeping up behind me, and by the time I did, it was too late. He dead-legged me, forcing me to my knees before shoving me to my face from behind. Trying to recover, I could see tears in his eyes. As though he had been having the worst day of his life and I just so happened to be the nearest victim. He kicked me hard in the ribs, knocking the air out of me and forcing me back to my face, where he continued to kick the ever-loving shit out of me. Once he had inflicted the pain to his standard, he just looked at me. Watched me as I cried and shook from the pain on the cold December sidewalk. And then he just walked away. No acknowledgement, no remorse, just coldly walked away from the damage that he had just done. I lay there for what felt like hours trying to regain my composure. Eventually, as the sun began to sink, I was able to will myself to my feet where I then limped home, pathetically. I prayed for his death that night. I asked God, Satan, anyone who would listen to just please kill Daniel Carson. The next day at school, Daniel wasn't there. It was the day before Christmas break, so I assumed that he, thankfully, had chosen to skip that day and start his break early. Ironically, I think the other kids noticed that I had been beaten pretty bad and I made it through the day. Enduring just a bit of mild bullying. I spent the break hiding in my room. Afraid to come outside after the incident. Hell, afraid of everything after the incident. My mom tried to comfort me. I'm so sorry, sweetie, she'd say as she ruffled my hair. Bullies are the worst. They're all big dumb idiots with awful home lives. And look on the bright side, Christmas is coming up. Maybe Santa will bring you something that makes you really happy. I hate to say it, but her words worked on me. I started to feel better, slightly. And on the night before Christmas, my family gathered in the living room where we drank hot cocoa, watched Home Alone, and opened one present each as per Christmas Eve tradition. I had gotten a book I had been dying to read, Mr. Mercedes, by Stephen King, and spent the rest of the night in my room under the covers, flipping through the pages with one hand and holding a flashlight with the other. At around 3 o'clock in the morning I heard what sounded like the shuffling of packages in the living room. Must be Mom putting the rest of the gifts under the tree, I thought to myself with a smile. Maybe it's time I call it a night. And with that, I put the book on my nightstand and, before I knew it, I was fast asleep. The next morning my brother and I tore into our gifts like ravenous animals. My spirits were high and I pretty much pushed Daniel out of my mind. I was hellbent on making sure nothing ruined the happiness I was feeling because, I knew, deep in my heart, that it was fleeting. I got a PlayStation 5 and some games, as well as a mountain of clothes and stocking stuffers. One by one the gifts under the tree slowly dissipated until there was one left. It had been wrapped in brown packaging paper and tied with string. Hanging loosely off the string was a note from the big man himself. Merry Christmas, Donovan. Nick. Neither of my parents claimed to know what the gift was, nor how it had gotten there, but they passed it to me nonetheless. It was weighty. So weighty in fact that I was a little confused as to how Mom and Dad could have forgotten about it. I slowly untied the string and peeled back the paper. Opening the flaps of the box, I could feel my soul vacate my body. Staring up at me with dead eyes and a tongue that dangled limply from his mouth, was the head of Daniel Carson. My mother actually fainted while my father rushed to dial 911. My brother simply hid in the corner behind the tree, and cried. I, however, could not contain the smile that was creeping across my face. A smile that soon morphed into an uncontrollable bit of laughter, much to the dismay of my family. My house had been shut down by cops after this, and we all spent the rest of the holidays with my aunt. My parents classified my reaction as the result of shock and horror. But as for me and Santa, we know what it meant. I'm writing this to say thank you. Thank you Santa for making my one real Christmas wish come true, smiley face. The end. Mommy, can I go out and? I don't like Chevrolets. BLAM. The shot to the back of her head was instant decimation at this close of range. The back of her head came apart in a blasting ruin. Gore and brain and skull with obscene strips of scalp decorated the place in a violent chunky spray. The floor. The scene. Him. I don't like Chevrolets. Those had been her last words. Funny. She must have been a Ford chick. Funny how he'd never asked before. Couldn't now. But that was all right. Hell, Mama had been right about this one. She was hella funny. Pretty too. Beautiful. Still was too. Yes, ma'am. Still was. Eddie belted the .38 making sure the safety was on. He liked to be careful. He was Mama's careful boy. Mama's careful boy of the graveyard. He admired the collapsed limp form of Bernice for a moment. A long time some would say. Hot and stifled in his sticking pickers where he doubled over and heaved the brainless body over his broad shoulders and made for the door of the deserted diner. Outside the moon was a night choir of uncontested baptismal light in the sky. Virgin white. His wedding night. Bulbous. Pregnant. Full with abundant light. No other star shone in its dominance of the sky. It conquered the neighboring heavens to curtain black. Save for the center, where it nuclear shone. Alone. Mighty. Celestial. Eddie hoped that one day he might be celestial too. He snapped to. Catching himself. He was drooling. Come on now. Gotta get going. Mom'll want us back now. He wasn't terribly concerned otherwise. The township was sparse. Most were in bed by now. All were inside their dens. Roosting. Doing sweaty secret things. Things he knew all about. Things Eddie loved to read about in his spare hours. When he wasn't pleasing Mama. His truck was parked only a half-mile away. He encountered no one on the way to it. Nor on the drive back to his old tired run-down homestead. The family farm. Mama, can I cut out the pussy parts or do I gotta leave 'em in? Ta make her work right. Oh, Eddie. He turned to the couch in front of the TV. What you think, Lou? Oh, I think a lady oughta have her pussy parts still all up in, and such on her special wedding night, yeah. Leave 'em. For now. After tonight who knows, then you can do whatever the hell you want with 'em. The whole family howled with laughter at that. Lou was the best. Such a joker and a way with words. Witty and such. Him and Bernice were gonna get along like fine. All of them together. Like pigs in mud. He cleaned out the wound in the kitchen as best he could as the rest of the family watched TV in the adjoining living room. He did a commendable job. He was experienced. The whole of the small cave of humble dilapidated space was cluttered to the point of surreality. The floor was gone. A forgotten memory that may have been carpet or wood or tile or who knows. Papers, magazines, comics, dolls, tapes, CDs, photo albums destroyed, cutlery, Legos scattered and unassembled or connected at random, tinfoil, dirty laundry and filthy socks stiff and encrusted with dead spent lost seed, children's books and babies' clothes, it all filled the home in a chaos pattern of animal randomness that could only be discerned by a disordered mind. The wound cleaned. Stuffed. Clothes changed. This part took a while. He stared. And fondled. Despite Mother's protestations. He fondled. Squeezed. Caressed. Licked. Inserted. But then he finally had Bernice dressed in one of Mama's old Sunday bests and down beside him on the second sofa, the lover's seat, with the rest of the family. All of them together. Watching TV. It was one of their favorites. The Addams Family. Or was it the Munsters? He couldn't tell. He was always getting those two confused. It didn't matter. They were all together. And he finally had a beautiful blushing bride-to-be. His beautiful pet Bernice. The waitress he'd always been too scared to talk to. Well, look at them now. Look at them now. I'm pretty. Sure, the Munsters are the ones with the little blonde girl. The normal one. Like she's the normal one in this family of freaks. That's the joke. The Addams Family, all of them are freaks. The room grew cold and tense. Eddie could feel an awkward sense of expectation from the rest of the family, all of them, aimed directly at him. He grew hot. Flustered. He felt like a horse frustrated in the bridle. He turned to his beautiful brand new bride. Baby, don't do that. Don't talk like that to me in front of everyone else. Not in front of the rest of the family. Grandpa made like to speak up. Now, Eddie dash. Shut. The fuck. Up. Old. Useless. Fuck. You didn't even kill Nazis in the war. I just don't like it when I made Ta look foolish in front of my own and such. Makes me look bad, and I'm the head of house and home. Head of the family. They all look up Tommy and such. Oh, baby, I'm so sorry. I shoulda known. You were always the strong silent one in the diner and I could tell just by looking at you that you was a strong family man. I'm sorry again, baby. I'm a good little bitch for daddy, I swear. I promise. I know, baby. I know. Will you make me a good little fuck doll bitch right now? No, baby. Not right now. Please. It's our wedding night. Babe, Ma Kin and Blood are all right there and gathered here for us, so not right now, okay? Later. Later when we upstairs again. Okay. I'm sorry. I just wanna be a good little bitch for you. I'm sorry if I embarrassed you. No, baby. No. You could never embarrass me. He contemplated what he could do sexually with the craterous wound that made the cavern of her gauze-stuffed skull as the rest of the family gazed their empty mummy stares at the television set. Black. Empty. The eyes long eaten out by hungry flies that laid their maggot young that now too have also fled. Empty sightless ebon gazes housed from within long mummified leather flesh. He leaned over and tongued his bride, Bernice. She was fresher now. But soon she'd be just like the rest of the family. The end. He has always been my responsibility. It was dark, and bitter cold, with the moonless night it was hard to see even your hand in front of your face. Still in this pitch black he was out there, and I knew I could not sleep till he was found. A living shadow, he reveled in the dark. Every night he did this. Every night he slunk about in the cloak of pitch, and it was my responsibility to find him and bring him back to the light. My responsibility to go out into the blackness and seek him. No matter how cold, no matter how dark. I pulled on my winter overalls, even with their insulation I knew the cold would still gnaw at my bones. The cold would seep through everything I wore. No coat, gloves, or hat would keep me warm. But I still put them all on. They may not keep me warm but they keep the frostbite away. The darkness seemed to eat any and all light. No matter how bright the flashlight was, I still felt nearly blind. But he was my responsibility. I had to go out. I had to find him. Like always my first stop was the cows. He liked to linger at the edges of the herd. Sometimes I was lucky and this stop would be my last. But I was not lucky today. Have you seen him? I asked Henry, the bull staring me down. I knew he would not answer, he never did, but I asked anyway. It felt better to ask, safer somehow. Like asking would keep the bull from charging me the moment I turned my back. With his silence I moved on. The herd watching as I walked away. If he was not with the cows then I had to keep looking. I could not return to the safety of light till I had found him. I called into the darkness. Sometimes he'd heed my call. Come to me and we both could return to warmth. He did not feel generous today. My calls for him died, being swallowed by the remorseful howling of the wind. My trudge through the dark would have to continue. It was like this most nights. I'd walk circles around the property till he would decide to manifest before me. Finally I gave up. My fingers were stiff with cold, despite the gloves. I couldn't keep going, hopefully he'd be kind and appear on my way back to the door. If not, I'd have to come out again. There in the darkness finally my flashlight caught the reflection of eyes. Not the large eyes of a cow, they were smaller closer to the ground. He had decided to be kind after all. Do you just enjoy watching me chase my own shadow? I asked him. He did not answer. In fact his eye disappeared from the flashlight beam. That was normal. He hated being caught in the flashlight beam. Sometimes I think the light might burn him. I knew despite no longer being able to see him he was close. He would follow me back to the house. Do you have to do this every night? I questioned. Again no answer. Just like Henry he never answers. For once I'd like to just go to bed. I sighed as we finally got to the door. I opened the door and he skittered in. I followed after him. In the light of the house he was no longer a nearly invisible shade. The living shadow was no longer just a shadow. He was back to being a dog. He looked up at me tail wagging. Honestly Bailey. Don't look so proud of yourself. I sighed. But my large black lab mix continued to look smug. The end.